everybody. Welcome to the Cynthia and Summer Show. We are
It's the Summer
excited,
Cynthia Show.
and it's the first episode, so we know all the shenanigans that happen when you are recording your first episode. There's nerves, there's excitement, all the feels. But before we get started, of course, we thought it would be appropriate to at least introduce ourselves because we know you're probably wondering who the heck are these ladies? So I'm Summer Martin, as I said. I was born and raised in Los Angeles and now live in Dallas, Texas, where I've been for the last 13 years. And no, I don't consider myself a Texan still. I'm a California girl at heart through and through. I am raising my first dog, a Scottish Terrier named Charlie, along with my husband. And we are about to actually celebrate our 8th year anniversary pretty soon this month. Right? And I'm a podcaster. In fact, that is how Cynthia and I met through this wonderful sisterhood that we have formed the last few years. Shout out to the She Podcast and e-leaguers out there. That's how we met. And my show is The Unconventional Woman. And it's pretty much a space where I just talk about any and everything that's on my mind. And we thought that, we transition over to this show so that as we go down this journey, you'll get the whole biography. But just in a nutshell, I'm Summer. I'm here and ready to share everything and anything that's on my mind. How about you, Cynthia?
Well, welcome from Chicago,
Yes.
Cynthia Bemis Abrams. And you maybe know my voice from Advanced TV Herstory, which is a podcast that's been out there now for, well, we're in our 6th year. And it's a place where my love of TV has translated into an audio format that connects TV and women and representation and equity and the growth and all of that to feminism and American culture and politics. And it's a very fun, expansive, it's been a great experience because we've had so much change in the last, 5-6 years.
Yes.
I am thrilled to be able to transition over to this whole video experience with Summer because it's an opportunity for me to step outside of that fairly tight space and talk about some of the other things that I think are important, that I'm thinking about in a way that Summer's podcast sort of is what she's thinking about. So we're kind of stepping out, and we're also recognizing that we have a lot of shared experience and common perspective. I was a lifelong Minnesotan until taking the leap to just say, you know what, there's a bigger world out there. And that bigger world from Minnesota is Chicago, because kids were grown, old people had passed, and there was just an opportunity to get out and see more and be closer to airports that can get you to other places in the world. So while COVID is happening, this has become my world: the computer, the webcam, and most importantly, my microphone. So let's go, Summer.
So a good question to follow up with that would be, how exactly did we get here? Again, Cynthia and I come from the podcasting world. Audio is intimate, but it also provides that security for us. And I'll speak for myself, for me to really go there, be vulnerable. But the key is you're not watching me. So here we are, both deciding to step out together and face this cliff of being vulnerable, more importantly, visibly. And we actually recorded an episode of your show, Cynthia. We'll do a plug for that, a 4-part series about memorable television characters and the role model aspects of these television characters. And we will have the link to that. And it was the chemistry, the natural chemistry from that moment where we realized, you know what, we may be on to something, and let's just see, let's go with the flow. So here we are. This is how we came about it. But Cynthia, how about for you? In your opinion, how did we get here?
Well, we're learning this curve at this time during COVID. We know that this is going to be kind of the way we're living for the next many, many months. I think there are some people who like to listen to podcasts and will always listen to us if we crank stuff out. There will be others who want to see our faces, who want to feel like they're connecting with friends. And just like, Summer and I have talked about The View, and we've talked about talk shows and some of the best TV we love. Sometimes it's seeing that face, and it's seeing the expression that happens when you're trying to make a point. And we so miss that connection in our daily lives right now. This is as good as it's going to get. So I want as much as I can get. And as much as I love putting it into an audio format and sending that out the door, I'm willing to say, let's give this a shot. Let's give this video thing a shot, and look into our audience's eyes and say, we're all in this together.
We are. Yeah. And we also don't know what the hell we're doing. There's comfort in the fact that no one knows the answers to any of this. And you just go through the journey together. So first journey is recording or vlogging. I think we're officially vloggers now, Cynthia.
Oh, I've just always gotten a little chill from that phrase. Vlog.
I know, right?
But if dudes can do it with their baseball caps on backwards and their scruffy beards and their very important things to say, then you know what? You and I have a lot of important things to say. Let's go.
I think so too. And so here we are. Sit back, kick back, and hang out with us for a little bit. Enjoy the ride.
So, Summer, you know what? I bet there are some people who are watching you and me going, how is this going to differ from their podcast? What are they going to talk about that they don't already talk about in their own private Idahos? And I guess from my perspective, the big difference is that it isn't always going to be about women in TV, because that only gets you so far. There's a lot going on in this world that is just as relevant as advanced TV history. So that's, I know for sure, listeners, if you'd like to listen to me sometimes get down a rabbit hole, I'm much more likely to get down this little rabbit hole with Summer than the highly structured advanced TV history. Summer, where are you coming from your podcast world?
I agree. Well, for the most part, I am an open book, and I love to share any and all things that are on my mind. The big difference in this particular platform is I am sharing the table with someone. And I'm actually, while I have guests on the show occasionally, for the most part, I am just talking to me and hoping someone is listening. So really, it's about having that dialogue instead of the monologue that I'm used to. And that's really, really what will be the key difference between my podcast and coming into this space with you.
Yeah. One of the things that we talked about that we knew we needed to be a little more clear. Okay, we're willing to do this. We're willing to stick our necks out and be vulnerable, as you describe it. But what can people expect from us? What would differentiate us? Not that we're going to do a SWOT analysis here, but
there's a lot competing for your attention these days, and we realize that. And I think a lot of the question or the answer to that question will honestly be answered by you, the viewer. We can sit here and give our fancy propositions and differentiators, but at the end of the day, you are talking about simply two women from different walks of life that came together for their love of podcasting, who and formed this relationship, and forming this relationship, which I think is also going to be special. You're actually organically seeing two women get to know each other in real time before your eyes on a deeper level.
Because we've never met in person.
We've never met in person. We did our first collaborative work, a few weeks ago. And now, and that again, because that was such a profound and rewarding experience, we've decided to do this. And so really it's just about watching the evolution of our relationship and what we can do with this show come alive. A lot of times shows are created with friends that have had this extensive history or some type of, extensive background. But
there are no inside jokes because we don't have them.
We're going to make them up with you, people.
And you get to be part of it. Isn't that great? I think I will just add on to that the one thing that because Summer and I have been podcasting almost the same amount of time. is that we have done a certain amount of internal exploration of where our convictions are, that and because neither of us are dependent on this for income, that we can say what we want to say. And something tells me if we are thinking it, across an age difference and a geographic difference and just an entire upbringing, then I'm kind of guessing that you might be thinking the same thing and you might want to say the
Absolutely.
same thing. And so maybe it's a sense of affirmation that no, we're not all crazy. We all do want the best for our country, for our families. We just want a better tomorrow. And
Yes,
that's what's going to be different, is that this is just raw, and it's going to come right to you.
exactly. So, again, we hope you hang out with us and accompany us on this journey. And ultimately, again, you will decide whether or not this show is worth your time, but we certainly hope you do. And we are unbelievably excited about this and also grateful for you to even take the time to watch this video right here.
Hey, so you know what? We've just decided that one thing we know we love a lot, that we have different perspectives about, but it all turns into a pretty rich dialogue, is TV. And so as Summer and I were sort of sorting through topics that, what kind of a topic should we get rolling on early in this? We both encountered a tremendous experience in watching the documentary on Harry Belafonte called The Sit-In, and it is on Peacock, and which is an NBC product. And lo and behold, it's all because it was about the week in 1968 when Harry Belafonte sat in for Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. Amazing. So, without further ado on that, I'm first and foremost turning it over to Summer because I watched it, but I mean, I watched the documentary, but wow, I was 4 at the time, and my folks didn't watch Johnny Carson any time. So, Summer, tell me about your some of your impressions and just kind of what's gone on for you in the week or so since you watched it.
It's another moment of history that I had no idea about. And I'm sure some of you are probably wondering, what the heck are we talking about? And then there's others of you who may be familiar with the subject. The sit in, wow, particularly that week in 1968, what Harry Belafonte did was beyond progressive and forward thinking. And even to Johnny Carson's credit, to allow him and enable him to take over his platform for a week and more importantly, give him creative control to do and say and talk about whatever you want. I'm still in awe of that moment. Because of course now, and particularly this year, we've seen a lot of attempts with especially social media platforms where particularly white people have given their platform over to a person of color or maybe specifically Black voices. And in an effort to, again, you can use my platform to speak for those who may be voiceless or perhaps extend your message somewhere to people outside of your specific audience. And so when I saw this documentary, it just it warms my heart. And Harry Belafonte is a national treasure that should be protected at all costs. Just the man, and let's first talk about the man. Yes, he's attractive. We can be very superficial. He was a very attractive man in his day, but a talented entertainer. But more important,
By 1968, he had been a major film star as well
oh,
as breakthrough, gold
he is A-list.
gold standard recording artist. So
Exactly.
he kind of he was Renaissance in that respect. He was at the top of his game, as well as having broken out in many other different forms of media to advocate regarding for all of the civil rights conversation that had been going on and the demonstration and the violence. Harry.
And that's what I was also going to get into is the fact that you had this A-lister who was made Hollywood comfortable for the most part with him and the way he was, but he also tested boundaries by raising the consciousness of the country, by being, like you said, an activist and aligning himself with other activists as well as politicians and fellow entertainers and just citizens of the country who gave a damn about something outside of just entertaining you.
Mm-hmm.
And Johnny Carson knew that, which was why, for the first time and only time, he gave up his show for this week period and allowed him to do what he wanted. And so, what did Harry Belafonte do? I am talking about. I'm still in awe of just how many people he had, and you can tell these are people that he knew personally, had genuine and real relationships with, and also knew that they're, at the end of the day, agendas aligned with one another. It was about creating this awareness and raising the social conscious, like I said, of the country and who can help me do this. And I mean, from the Aretha Franklins to Robert F. Kennedy and Paul Newman and the Smothers Brothers and Bill Cosby and Lena Horne and Nipsey Russell. I mean, he had like over 80 people that were just cream of the crop and in a week.
Mm-hmm.
In a week.
And they make the point in the documentary that back then in the Johnny Carson show era, when a guest came on, the first guest stayed on the couch. And then the second
I love that
so
format.
by the time you got to the end, yeah, the last guest maybe didn't have a whole lot of time for the one-on-one interaction, but they were having conversation and they were all making each other feel comfortable. And then there's that visual statement of these people sitting shoulder to shoulder. And that's powerful. We don't see that much of that today.
And again, you could tell that was a genuine moment, that wasn't the first time these people had been in the same space together. There was this comfort level because, again, these are my friends. These are people I often have these conversations with and hang out with. So it was all organic and very much authentic. It wasn't this weird hodgepodge of putting guests together and hopefully they don't say anything that's offensive to one another
Right.
and not get along. No, you could tell all of them swing in the same circles at any given occasion. And that was also what was magical about it, that it was so authentic and genuine.
Mm-hmm. And this coming into American living rooms at a time when there was nothing else on late night. So this was appointment viewing for many families, not mine, but many families that this is how, married couples or singles wound down at the end of the day, watching a little Johnny Carson and then going to bed. So there was no bigger platform across the three networks than this for this kind of sort of quasi-political, quasi-comic, pop culture conversation. It was huge.
And that was another thing. To his credit, Harry Belafonte, he really created the blueprint, if you will, of comedy and politics. It was in that moment where the two married.
Mm-hmm.
And, oftentimes we say art imitates life or the other way around. That was never seen before on prime time, if you will. And also, more importantly, visually, you have all these Black and brown faces in your space, in your home, on nighttime television. The audacity for this Negro to bring all these other Negroes, because at this time, I mean, that word was commonly used. Again, just how forward thinking for network television that was, and not for it to not really be known is amazing. And probably the other travesty of that moment is the lack of having the recordings. There were only like 2 recordings out of all the phenomenal content that week, that we don't have it. It was kind of sad.
Because the networks at the time, in a cost saving and resource conserving way, basically got to the end of the week or the end of the month, and then they reused most of the tape because that's how all of that was stored. And
Right.
so the documentary did a very important statement about that, as well as the fact that there was somebody out there who was actually conducting audio recordings. Now, granted, they weren't technically copyright cleared, but still, somebody was audio recording them. They do exist, and you know, it's the power of the viewer, I think, and being a true fan that somebody took the time to do all that.
Yeah. Yeah. I Another takeaway for me that I learned, I didn't realize folk music started with us, meaning Black people, and it was a way to record music that was meant again about social consciousness, and it was created in this genre specifically because you had a hard time mixing it with R&B, because R&B is supposed to be, happy, sad, lovely, but not really heavy, talking about things that are going on. And so a lot of musicians, your Leon Bibb, for example, and Richie Havens, I learned about them for the first time watching this documentary. I didn't know that folk music was a way for them to raise again the consciousness of society through a musical genre. So
It was very well done. I really encourage people, if you've got access to Peacock, and now there's a Peacock app for Roku, so you can, somehow hunt it down. It's really worth it. It's an excellent documentary that kind of crosses the interests of civil rights, American history, pop culture, media studies. It really is it is a week of history that so many people had no idea existed. And NBC's got a lot of makeup to do for a lot, decades and decades of poor judgment, and
yeah,
uh, too much turning their backs on what was appropriate and equitable, and in just don't get me going on NBC. But the one thing they
yeah,
did is they ended up producing this, and it wasn't just them. Actually, it's Joy Reid and Joan Walsh.
yes, yes, who
So
were the powerhouse behind it. I did not
yeah,
know they executive produced, yeah, and made that
two
happen.
two hardworking, mid. I'm going to call them mid-level, not in a bad way, but these are not household. Joy Reid is now a household name, but still, they are not. They're not way up here. They are carrying the load, and they felt that this was a story that needed to be told. So
And
shout out to
nonetheless,
Joy
women
Reid.
who've been putting in that work too for a
Yeah.
while, both of them equally. Yes, thank you, ladies, for such an important piece of history that needs to be told and celebrated. And again, Harry needs all of his roses while he's here
Mm-hmm.
to accept them. And when I think about just all that he has seen in his 90 plus years of life on this earth, yeah, I'm speechless.
I get chills. Yeah.
Yes, again, we can't both say enough to check out this documentary. And if you don't have Peacock, perhaps MSNBC or maybe even NBC, if you have cable, may have it on demand, hopefully,
Yeah.
and maybe YouTube. But I hope that they do another airing of this. And again, this was just this moment in time, this little blip in history. Yet it was so impactful, so meaningful, so profound, so forward thinking. Again, we've been doing a lot of sharing platforms now, but you were talking about in the middle of upfront Jim Crow era,
Yeah.
on the brinks of civil rights movement.
So, Summer, you told me that your mother watched this live time. Where was
Yes.
she, and what was she thinking when this was going on?
At the time, so they were part of the families who watched Johnny Carson, very familiar, and particularly her parents, my grandparents. And but she specifically remembers, they all remember that week when it was announced, and just the pride of just seeing us on television talking about everything, living life, just happy and just, it meant a lot. It meant a lot. And when you see a young Aretha Franklin singing her heart out, but yet also out on the streets, hitting the pavement and being there for, as we say, down for the cause. And you see a Hollywood starlet like Lena Horne, another woman that's, beautiful, full of grace and all and charm, but yet was also willing to roll up her sleeves. That left an impression with her. My mother will never forget that moment in time. It meant a whole lot. We didn't spend too much time talking about it, and I'll probably go back and revisit that because there's just some other things that I want to talk about my mother with, and but I did. In fact, credit to her. She is the one who brought it to my attention initially. I kind of saw it on MSNBC advertised, but she was like, "You need to watch it," and
Yeah.
I did, and I'm happy I did.
Yeah. And to just sort of perhaps close out this conversation, it turned out to be the last major TV appearance by Robert
Mhm.
Kennedy before he was assassinated
As
three
well
weeks
as Dr. Martin
three,
Luther King.
3 weeks later. Yeah.
Yeah,
1968 was just a wildly violent year. And I think that that's a little bit of what's resonating right now. The timing of this documentary could not be any better because it's a
yeah.
recognition of the fact that the voice needs to continue on, and it needs to be shared, and the couch needs to be shared, and violence is not the answer. It just really isn't, not in this country at least.
I agree wholeheartedly. So, yes, go learn some history, you guys, and check out the wonderful documentary, The Sit In.
All right.